Assassin's Creed Mirage is out and was supposedly going to be a small little title that got back to the roots of Assassin's Creed before we got our next big open world RPG game set in feudal Japan. And yeah, I wanted to have a chill little discussion about Mirage since I've been playing it a good amount over the past couple days. I haven't beaten it quite yet, I think I'm like 10 hours in maybe, so spoilers I guess if you're super worried about that, but at least from what I've experienced so far, which we'll get into, there's not much when it comes to the narrative to talk about. So, where to begin? I guess kind of lay the groundwork, I would start off by saying that I am a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I love the Ezio trilogy, love Black Flag, I appreciate the original a ton, and there's even elements I like of games like 3 and Unity and maybe barely anything on Syndicate, but I didn't really realize how much I appreciated what Assassin's Creed was until it was gone. And we got the Mythology trilogy starting off with Origins in 2016, or 2017, which I actually like Origins quite a bit. There's a lot of stuff in that game that I really enjoy, but as the trilogy went along, the integral EC elements that I look for in those games just got like stomped out to the point where the series was unrecognizable, and especially like Odyssey, that game, I was not a fan of what they were doing with that when it came to Assassin's Creed, just everything. That was the one game still to this day in the series that I haven't beaten, and I just was not into it. But I would recommend, if you are interested in hearing my thoughts on the rest of the series, go watch the ranking I made after Valhalla came out, which I'll leave a link to in the description below if you're interested. But yeah, I was ecstatic to see that Mirage was apparently going back to basics for the series, and I didn't exactly believe them because it's Ubisoft, but I was hopeful. So now that the game is out, I think it mostly succeeds in what it set out to do, and I've actually been really enjoying my time with the game. I guess to put it kind of simply, Mirage is very much a simple, classically inspired Assassin's Creed experience. There's a lot to appreciate, and I think I would say, for me, it is scratching that Assassin's Creed itch I have had for quite a few years. Obviously, Mirage is way smaller than the previous games, and I think much of that is to its advantage. It is, I feel like, taking most players, from what I've seen online, like 12 or 13 hours to beat, so pretty reasonable. Again, it's not a full price game, so I feel like it very much knows what it is, but at least for me, it's been nice not having a game with 50 hours of bloat and then only 10 hours of actual relevant story content like Valhalla. There's not an entire country recreated in an Assassin's Creed game. It's back to how it was kind of with Rome and Brotherhood, where it's just a city with a little bit of desert and these outlying districts for you to explore. Also, having a city back means that parkour is also back. Kind of. At least a little bit. It's pretty much, for the first time since 2015, there's actually a free running system that's not just, okay, hold the trigger and you can climb every rock in sight, every small, building you see in sight. That's what Origins, Valhalla, and Odyssey all had, and that was one of those things in those games that drove me absolutely nuts, because kind of as the Assassin's Creed series went along, the parkour was never really that crazy. It was always like pretty fun, but it was never like, mind-blowing really. Some people argue the earlier games were, which I think they were to an extent, very impressive in how it allowed the player to have so much control over their movement, but the fact that they took that very defining part away from the series was always really upsetting to me. So it's cool that in this game, Baghdad is similar to the cities of the past, where it's actually just pretty fun running around, and you actually don't want to fast travel places because you just want to try and find the best path to your destination, and you're faced with these obstacles in your way. Or, shocker, it was weird just feeling this, you were actually faced with walls in front of you in Mirage that you can't just completely climb up. That's something that I haven't been able to say in an Assassin's Creed game in a very long time. It still, for me personally, doesn't really reach just how energetic and stylish and fun Unity's freerunning was, or the intricacies of like the first couple games parkour, but it's clearly a parkour system inspired by the original games, and I think it's good enough for what it is. Again, just having an actual system there as opposed to nothing like there has been is so appreciated. Also in Mirage, majority of the missions throughout the game, you're free running throughout the city, investigating situations, or you are just doing stealth encounters, which again is such a nice change of pace from the previous games that I forgot just how much I did enjoy the classic style of sneaking around and climbing a massive structure with different walls and ledges and rooms to try and find, and just finding the best place around climbing these big buildings to try and kill your target. It was just like so much fun. There's even like a classic tailing mission. There might be more. Like I said, I haven't beaten it, but it just feels really good and is fun. Now, is it simple? Yes. Is it the most interesting, complex, modern stealth system ever made? No. But it is really enjoyable, and once again feels very inspired by the classic Assassin's Creed mission design. And just like the original Assassin's Creed, the actual combat, if you do end up needing to get into it, is not, like, very good or fun, I would say. It's fine, but incredibly basic. It has a light attack, a heavy attack, a parry, and a dodge, and that is it. And unfortunately, for me, the animations for the parry kills, which are how you are probably going to be getting most of your kills when you are in these combat situations, I saw like 2 different animations, I think, throughout the times it's happened so far. So for me, they got very, very repetitive. Now, there were more varied animations if you just kill not parrying at all, you just kind of spam the light attack or heavy attack button, but that's not really how you're supposed to play. Now, this doesn't really matter, like I said, too much, because I've had, I'm not exaggerating, maybe 10, 11 combat encounters throughout my 10 hours of this game so far, because like I said, it's all stealth focused, so if you have to fight more than 2 enemies at a time, you've probably done something wrong. There are the occasional story missions where it comes up, but for the most part, it is very focused on stealth. And in fact, I think I even said in my last Assassin's Creed video that I did that Valhalla feels like Ubisoft never wants you to play it with stealth. Well, I feel like Mirage is the exact opposite in the sense that it never wants you to engage in actual combat, like I said, with the exception of a few missions, which I still definitely prefer because it's much more akin to classic Assassin's Creed than Valhalla ever was. And the original Assassin's Creed, for all the great things about it, combat was never a standout in that game, or really any of those like early games. I think the combat, especially in like Brotherhood and Revelations and 2, was a little bit better, but in the first game, it's never really been a focus in any of these games until Origins and maybe Syndicate, you could argue, but I mean, combat has never really been Assassin's Creed's forte. It was always just satisfying enough due to the way the animations were. At least that's how I've always had it. So combat is extremely underwhelming in Mirage and not really too fun at all. But again, it's really not too common, so it doesn't bother me too much. Other than that, everything else in the game is stuff that I was pretty happy to see. Sections just focused on investigating and using clues to try and find locations on the map, and having the synchronized points with a little bit of like puzzles worked into them again. Again, it's not the craziest thing in the world, but it's at least stuff that makes you think a tiny bit, which when it comes to the past couple games and comparing it to those, just was non-existent. It's just stuff like blending in with crowds to sneak into places, and even pickpocketing got a little rework that I kind of like. Just all things that once again make me go, oh, I'm actually playing an Assassin's Creed game again. This is cool. It's crazy to think how nice it is that there are no like mythological creatures or dumb level gating or fantasy elements. It's just refreshing after the last few years. And of course, an actual hidden blade with real assassins again. I forgot that that was a thing that wasn't in our Assassin's Creed games 2 games ago, so it is just so lovely to have all those kind of things back. Now, there is a narrative to this game, but it's also the worst part of the experience. The stories have always been such a huge part of these games for me, and they've taken so many different forms. I think the best Assassin's Creed stories are the ones where the Creed plays an integral role in the development and characterization of the main character. This is very evident in something like the first game, through Altair's coming to terms with being an assassin and the Creed, or Ezio's coming of age, or Edward's finding of the Brotherhood and therefore finding a more selfless purpose in his life, or even stuff like Haytham and Connor debating the Assassin-Templar conflict in terms of themselves and in terms of the American Revolution. Even when these stories were flawed, they usually leaned into what made Assassin's Creed special and used that to further its characters. And Mirage, so far, has a very unremarkable story. Again, I'm not completely done with it yet, but I haven't found this story gripping in the slightest, really, and Basim is made for a pretty unremarkable protagonist. He's shown at the beginning of the game as a street thief who longs to join the Hidden Ones, and through this kind of traumatic experience that happens that is his fault, he ends up getting the chance to. He trains, he becomes a member, which, of course, all this stuff kind of in the beginning of the game, all the stuff that to me kind of not fan service, but I guess in a sense it is fan service, where you're doing the initiation, you're hearing Ezio's family track play. In the moment, it was all super cool stuff to me. But once the game really gets going, and you get to Baghdad, it's very much just investigate this, which leads to revealing an Order member, assassinate them, and then have occasional conversations with this bureau. Maybe you, like, get involved in the story where someone's father was murdered or someone's son was taken, like all these small different things. But this kind of structure and this part of the game is what to me most feels like it started out as a Valhalla DLC. There have been a few conversations here and there about like Bassam's thoughts on the hidden ones and some moments hinting at Isu connections or broader story implications, but other than a few like things every once in a while where I'm like, ooh, that could be interesting, for the most part it's just very bland. Again, gameplay-wise, it's always pretty fun, but narratively, all these different threads just feel so disconnected from one another, and it doesn't meaningfully further the character of Bassam in any way, and it's not really contributing to an overall plot that is interesting in any way. It's just very basic with characters you don't really care about, and a protagonist who doesn't have a strong personality. Now, I'm sure some people will compare it to Assassin's Creed 1 and say, oh, that's all you did in that game. You just went to bureaus and assassinated and investigated and did it again. And yeah, I mean, I agree. Assassin's Creed 1 is probably the most repetitive game I have ever played when it comes to mission structure, but at the same time, it was still always building character with Altair and with Al-Mohim in these conversations, and using this to raise questions about the meaning of being an assassin and the creed and stuff like that. And Mirage doesn't really have any of that. It's just a bland story. I'm sure when we get to the end, it'll end up having, like, Bassam will interact with some kind of piece of Eden and be in some crazy room like, you know, these games always do. And I'm sure maybe there'll be some hints about him being the reincarnation of Loki and all that stuff, but that's not really story stuff that I'm looking forward to, since I hated all the Loki stuff in Valhalla, but we'll see when I get there. Also, technically, I will say that this game is nothing to write home about, at least for me. The world looks great, and I adore the colors of Baghdad and visually, like, how it all comes through. Assassin's Creed in the Middle East always, like, feels really good, and I love the setting of the game, I can't stress that enough. But technically, like, as a piece of software, lots of faces just look off to me. The lip syncing and plenty of conversations could be much better, and I have had plenty of frame rate issues throughout my time as well. Also, the free-running controls the game starts you out with are horrible, just FYI. I changed mine to the trigger instead of the left stick where you hold it down. Just a small thing, but that did make a big difference in making it feel a lot more smooth when I was running around the city. Now, all that being said, I am enjoying this game quite a bit. And it's been really interesting to hear the discussion because plenty of classic Assassin's Creed fans do seem satisfied, but lots of others also just think the game is too simple and too basic and too dated. And, I mean, in a way, I don't even disagree that much, I think. I don't think Assassin's Creed Mirage is this, like, really great game that does anything too crazy, but I think it clearly is what it set out to be. Do the mechanics of Mirage feel almost very basic and like they're from the late 2000s in a sense? I want to say kind of, but I also know that's what I like about it. I got what I wanted from Mirage, and I'm pretty happy about it. Now, does this kind of put us in an awkward place as to where we go from here, because I don't really see them making another classic-style game, really, after this. We know Codename Red will be in the Odyssey style and a big open-world RPG, crazy, 100 hours. We know what that's going to be. That Codename Hex game that they also announced, who has any idea what that's going to be, but I'm not really sure what Assassin's Creed should be in this modern era of gaming anymore. I want to say, if it was up to me and I was just told to make another full Assassin's Creed game however I wanted, I want to say that it should just be a more full version similar to Mirage, because there is definitely room to improve the stuff in Mirage. Like I said, I like the game, but in some senses it does feel a little dated, and I think you can keep improving it by adding like even more freedom in the levels and mechanics and doing things that stay true to the identity of the series. I don't think the core of Assassin's Creed is broken, if that makes sense. I don't think the core is too dated. I think you can keep improving on the stuff in Mirage and of that classic Assassin's Creed experience and make it a very compelling AAA modern day experience. And I'm not sure exactly how you do that going forward. I don't even know if the general public will want that. Or even things like the modern day story. Like, I have no clue where you take that going from here on forward. But I almost think that Assassin's Creed, as it was such a lightning in a bottle thing for those first batch of games. It had the modern day that was interesting, with a good protagonist. It just was such its own weird, unique thing, which is why so many of us fell in love with it in the first place. And yeah, I have no idea where you go from here. And even though I do like Mirage as its own kind of weird standalone thing, it is more of a fun trip down memory lane than anything too concrete as we move forward. And for me, it's still missing the narrative and thematic components of Assassin's Creed that I love and that really make the best games of the series something special for me. So maybe for me that would be the focus, maybe try and improve and expand Mirage's mechanics with a really thematically rich and compelling story. Maybe that would be how I would take the next big Assassin's Creed game. But really, I don't know what you do. I just think it's an interesting conversation because people are kind of all over the place when it comes to this. I guess we'll see sales numbers when they come out if people are interested in this game, but at least from what I've seen, a lot of fans that do miss the old style of Assassin's Creed games are pretty happy with what Mirage is. And if this is the last we ever see of this style, then I mean, it's a fun enough note to go out on, but I don't know long term what this really means for us. But yeah, I mean, that's Assassin's Creed Mirage, a pretty solid game that should satisfy, like I said, most fans that are thirsty for some classic Assassin's Creed content. It doesn't go all the way, but honestly nothing probably ever will, and I think this is a pretty solid compromise for a little modern adventure that takes heavy inspiration from what came before. It's not a groundbreaking game or anything, but for what it set out to be, it's been bringing me quite a bit of fun and joy, and it's just been fun playing an actual Assassin's Creed game again, which the last one came out 8 years ago, which is crazy to think about. So the fact that, you know, fans of this series, that was 8 years ago, that's a long time, so the fact that we're finally back to that, it has been very cool that we've gone to play this, and I'm enjoying it. I'm very happy they made this. I can feel the dedication to actually bring it back to what made those original Assassin's Creed games good. Again, that's different for everyone. I know some people are Assassin's Creed like 1 purists, and if it doesn't have the most different philosophical talking points about Assassin's Creed with the exact parkour that was present in the first game, then they're not going to be happy. It's like the identity of any series or any brand, but I think this game is going to hit on what a lot of people are going to be missing from the newer games. It's not everything, like I said, but I think it's a pretty good compromise for what we've been getting. And I do think it's enjoyable, and I just wish it had a much better story, which would kind of make it a more meaningful addition to the Assassin's Creed universe. So, I think that's all I have to say. If you have played Mirage, let me know what you think, and more than anything, what do you think they should do for the next Assassin's Creed game, ignoring Codename Red, obviously. Say they do make another Assassin's Creed game after that that's not a big open world RPG, and it is a quote-unquote Assassin's Creed game, what are your ideas? What are your pitches? What would you do for the modern day? I've also heard the idea of a reboot thrown around. Do you think they should just start from basics and redo the modern day and just do like a reboot of the series? I don't think they should do that, but I don't know what you do. So let me know all of that in the comments down below. I am excited to hear your thoughts, and thank you guys for watching Majestic Gaming.